Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. I want to say a very big thank you to all of you for the likes, the comments, the encouraging words. I really appreciate. To my subscribers, I want to say a very big thank you to you all. And if you know you've not subscribed, please do where to subscribe and hit on the notification button so that you'll be notified each time I post a new video. Please follow me on Instagram at Lilyful Designs and send me outfits you want me to try on. So without much saying, let's go into the drafting and sewing of this dress. So I made use of scuba fabric, half yard of scuba fabric. You might want to need more yardage if you are making for a bigger child. I use lining as well and some two nets, that is 5 yard of two nets, and I'll be using a zipper. You can choose to use a button as well. So that is pearls over there that I will just be using for the decoration. Let's start off with the basic bodies, and we'll be drafting an A-line gown. First, I will take my measurements, the length of the gown, and I will add my allowance over there. I have 1 inch extra for the zipper allowance towards me. So I took 21 inches for the length of the gown and 1 inch for the allowance, for the hemming allowance. So I'm turning that into a straight line. To know the amount of fabric to put on fold is quarter of your chest measurement plus 2 to 3 inches extra. So we'll go ahead to the shoulder and input our shoulder measurement. Half of the shoulder measurement I'm working it with is 4 inches plus half yard that I'll be using for joining. So I'll take my neckline of 2.25 inches for the front neckline as the width, and I'll come down by 2.25 as well for the neck depth. That will be for the front, and for the back I will be doing 2.25 by 1 inch, and I'll connect that into a round neckline. Please take note that all my measurements started from that zipper allowance. From that 1 inch I ruled straight. I am not getting into the zipper allowance. So I will move to the shoulder point and come down by half an inch for the shoulder slope and connect it straight to the shoulder width. We will always do this because human shoulder is not straight. If it is for an adult, you can come down by 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So from the shoulder slope, I'm coming down by 4 inches, which is half of the round armhole. The round armhole is 8 inches. So I came down by 4 inches for the half of the round armhole, and this now will turn my chest line. So I'm marking that into a straight line, and I will input what I have on my shoulder on that line. So I'm inputting the same 4.5 inches I have on my shoulder to get a straight line. I'll turn that to a straight line as well, and that will be my armhole depth or arm side depth. So I'll get the middle of that line and I'll come in by half an inch inwards. So on the chest line, I will input quarter of the chest measurement plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. So quarter of the chest measurement was 5.5 plus 1.5 inches seam allowance, and I'll join it to the armhole. So I'm trying to get the armhole curve for the front and the back. The place I came in by half an inch is the front. So on the hem part, I will add 3 inches. You can add 2 inches to what you have on your chest measurement to get the A line. I added 3 inches and I connected the two lines from the chest to the hemline. So on the hem part, I'll just come up a bit To avoid those sharp edges, I came up by half an inch and I connected it straight to the middle part. So the remaining thing here now is the joining allowance for the shoulder. I will add half an inch for the joining allowance and the pattern is ready to be cut out. So I will go ahead and cut the pattern. Remember we are cutting both the front and the back. So I'll first cut the back through all the lines that are for the back. I'll cut through the lines of the back and I'll cut it on my fabric. After cutting it, I'll trim off the front lines and cut as well. So I cut the back line, neckline first, the back armhole first. So I'll go and cut this out on my fabric exactly the way it is right now. And after cutting it, I'll trim off the front armhole and the front neckline. And also I will fold in the zipper allowance and I'll use it to cut the front part. Remember that your front part will be cut on fold, so indicate it on the pattern so you do not forget. As for my net, I folded the 5 yards I had into this part so that it will be accommodated on my table. And I'm trying to get an even end over there. So I marked out a line as my starting point and I'm measuring down 6 inches. The length of the ruffle will be 6 inches. But if you do not want to trim it down after sewing, just go for 4 inches or 5 inches. I think 4 inches or 5 inches will be better because I later trimmed mine. So I went ahead and continue marking the 6 inches down till I exhaust the nails. This will be for the ruffle part on the gown, on the down part of the gown. Remember I also have ruffle on the sleeve that I will be making it 3 inches length. So I went ahead to cut all those pieces till I exhausted the length of the nails. On the sleeve I'll be cutting a basic sleeve. On my paper I am ruling a straight line as my starting point, and from there I will take the length of the sleeve plus the hemming allowance. So right there I took 5 inches plus 1 inch hemming allowance and I'll mark that straight. The next thing I am to do right now is to get the cap height for the sleeve, and you calculate the cap height by dividing the chest circumference by 12 plus half an inch is allowance. So I got mine and I input it there as my calf's height. So on this my calf's height is where I will now put half of my round armhole plus the allowance I used. Half of my round armhole was 4 inches plus 1.5 inches, same allowance that I used. And I will take the round sleeve measurement of the child. So the child's round sleeve was 3.5. I added 3.5 over there, half of it, because the round sleeve was 7 inches, half of it was 3.5. And I added my seaming allowance and joined. So this is how you go about basic sleeve. If you are taking for um, long sleeve or three quarter, you follow the same process. So from that half of the round armhole, I'm joining it straight to the tip of the shoulder. Yes, I'll say shoulder because that's where the shoulder will start from. Once I get the midpoint from there, I'll measure it and get the midpoint and mark half an inch upwards from the midpoint. So from that midpoint, I'll join the lines you see me marking. So from there, I'll join that with a stretch ruler. That will be for my back armhole. And with the curved part of the ruler, I am joining it to the tip, to the center front. Yes. So the that curve is for the back. So for the front curve, I am joining the lines you see me marking as well with a curve. It will be deeper than the first one. You know, while we were drafting our basic bodies, we came in half an inch from the front part. So the front is deeper on the basic bodies. The front will as well be deeper on this basic sleeve, so that when you are joining it, it will match up. So this is how it will look now. The front is already connected, likewise the back, and I'll blend it to this seam allowance, and that is that for that. I'll go ahead to cut it out. I'll cut through the back armhole first. I'll fold in that seam allowance, sorry. I'll fold in the seam allowance on the hem part, and I'll cut through the line. I'll cut through the back armhole first, then I'll open it up and trim off the front armhole. So go through the back first. So this is what it looks like after cutting, and I'll open it up and trim off the front armhole so that it becomes deeper than the back part. Once I've done that, I will label it front and back so that it does not confuse me while I'll be cutting and fixing it on the dress. So as you can see, the front is deeper. I'll go ahead and use this to cut out our sleeve. So I've used my pattern to cut out all the parts we need. I've cut out the front and the back parts of the dress, and I also cut out lining for it. The lining I cut, you can cut full lining, but I decided to come down 4 inches from the armhole, and I stopped. I just want to conceal the neckline with the lining. You can use bias if you want. So I did exactly the same thing on the front, and for my sleeve I have already cut the sleeve with the pattern, and I made a notch on the front part so that when I'm fixing it, I will know that the notched area is meant to stay at the front part of the dress. So for my Peter Pan collar, I'll be cutting it together. I just want to cut the simplest one, and I just folded a lining underneath. I folded my front part of the dress and I placed it on it. So I'm tracing it just like you are cutting a facing. I just trace out the neckline and the shoulder line over there. The cloth is on fold, the lining is on fold. So from that end, I am coming down by 2.5 inches. That's the I want the width of the Peter Pan collar to be 2.5 from that end. Then towards the shoulder, I'll come in by 2 inches so that it will be narrow at their end. Yes, I came in by 2 inches, and I'll try to connect it to the 2.5 I had earlier. So having drawn this out, I'll mark it out very well for you to see. So on that part, I'll go up by 1.5 inches, and I'll come in by 1 inch towards the part I'm marking. I'll connect it with a curve. I want to have this Peter Pan collar as one piece. You can choose to do it as two pieces, If you are doing it as two pieces, you have to make that curve to touch the center of the neckline so that you cut through it, you cut it open. But I'll be stopping at 1.5 inches, just a bit before the center neckline. I'll trim this out and you will see how it looks like. I added my seam allowance. Why? Because now it's 2.5 inches. After sewing it will be 2 inches. So this is how it is. If you want to carve it separately, you have to cut through that middle part for it to be separate. I used it to cut out my scuba fabric. One is the lining and the second is the scuba fabric. Then I'll place them right side on each other and take to my sewing machine to sew them up. I'll stitch with half an inch seam allowance over there. I'll notch them, turn them out and iron it properly. So for my two net, I've cut out the pieces I need. I left some for the sleeve, but the sleeve I'll be using 3 inches width. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and run a stitch and a gather stitch at the middle. If you don't have a gather stitch, just run a loose straight stitch on that middle, then you start pulling the thread. I'll run a gather stitch and gather all of them up. So I've assembled my neckline, my Peter Pan collar, and I'll bring it to the front part. This is the right side of the fabric facing me and the lining part facing downwards for the Peter Pan collar. I'll place it like so and bring my lining to cover it up, and I'll just sew through the neckline. So my Peter Pan collar is just for the front. Your Peter Pan collar can run from the front to the back part. It depends on what you want. I just want it to be on the front. For the back part as well, I will sew the neckline and I'll stop at that zipper area so that I'll be able to face my zip. I'll sew through the neckline and stop at the zipper area. So right now I've joined my Peter Pan collar and I top stitched an iron. I used hemming gum to hold the neck area so it relaxes. I'll go ahead and join the back part to the front part. I'll place the shoulder together and I'll join them. So in joining them, as I've placed them together, I will try to bring the lining of the back part to cover the whole of the shoulder part up. Just look at what I'm doing. I brought the lining from the back part. I opened the lining of the back part and I folded it to the front part just for me to get a neat and clean stitching. And I'll take to my sewing machine and I will stitch that up. I will also stitch the side of the lining to lining, then fabric, scuba fabric to scuba fabric. So right now I've joined all the whole thing. I've joined the Peter Pan as well as the sides of the shoulder and the sides of the fabric. I joined this lining to lining and the scuba fabric to scuba fabric. I made sure I ironed all the seams. All the seams are open. You iron them properly. And I'll bring in my ruffle. I've gathered all this at the middle and I'll bring it to the down part of the. Remember to leave your seam allowance if you want to hem it, but scuba fabric does not fray, so you can choose not to hem it as well. It will still not fray. So from that zipper notch I made to the other zipper notch I made, that's where I'll be fixing them. I'll place it over there and run my stitch on the middle part of the of where I gathered. You run it to try, just take your time, open them up, run your stitches on the middle part. That's for the first line. After the first line, I'll push that over and run my another line of stitch over on the second line, leaving 1 inch or half an inch space depending on the amount of fabric you have. So this is what my dress looked like after joining the down ruffles. I've also joined the ruffles of the sleeve and attached the sleeve as well. As you can see, I've attached my zipper, and I'll take to my ironing table to iron them properly. But before then, I will attach my pearls. I'll just attach the pearls on the Peter Pan collar just to give it a little bit of spice. It will sure look good on it. I'll attach it through the lines of the Peter Pan collar. You can attach to the body as well, all the parts you want to. So this is how my dress looks after I've attached my pearls through the Peter Pan collar, and as you can see, it's already beautiful. Please, if you derive any value from this video, do well to give it a thumbs up, share to your family and friends, comment as well, and please, if you've not subscribed, do well to subscribe, and remember to hit on the bell button so that each time I post a new video you will be notified. Thank you for watching up to this point. I really appreciate. See you in my next video. Bye.